So today we're looking at Majjhima Nikaya 106, the way to the imperturbable. This is a translation by Bhikkhu Bodhi. Thus have I heard on one occasion the Blessed One was living in the Kuru country, where there was a town of the Kurus named Dhamma. There the Blessed One addressed the bhikkhus thus. Bhikkhus, venerable sir, they replied. The Blessed One said this: Bhikkhus, sensual pleasures are impermanent, hollow, false, deceptive. They are illusory, the prattle of fools. Sensual pleasures here and now, and sensual pleasures in lives to come. Sensual perceptions here and now, and sensual perceptions in lives to come. Both alike are Mara's realm, Mara's domain, Mara's bait, Mara's hunting ground. On account of them, these evil, unwholesome mental states, such as covetousness, ill will, and presumption, arise, and they constitute an obstruction to a noble disciple in training here. Therein a noble disciple considers such: sensual pleasures here and now, and sensual pleasures in lives to come, constitute an obstruction to a noble disciple in training here. Suppose I were to abide with a mind abundant and exalted, having transcended the world and made a firm determination with the mind. When I do so, there will be no more evil, unwholesome mental states, such as covetousness, ill will, and presumption in me. And with the abandoning of them, my mind will be unlimited, immeasurable, and well developed. When he practices in this way and frequently abides thus, his mind acquires confidence in this base. Once there is full confidence, he either attains to the imperturbable now, or else he resolves upon it with wisdom. On the dissolution of the body after death, it is possible that the evolving consciousness may pass on to rebirth in the imperturbable. This, bhikkhus, is declared to be the first way directed to the imperturbable. Again, bhikkhus, a noble disciple considers thus: there are sensual pleasures here and now, and sensual pleasures in lives to come, sensual perceptions here and now, and sensual perceptions in lives to come. Whatever material form there is, all material form is the four great elements, and the material form derived from the four great elements. When he practices in this way and frequently abides thus, his mind acquires confidence in this base. Once there is full confidence, he either attains to the imperturbable now, or else he resolves upon it with wisdom. On the dissolution of the body after death, it is possible that the evolving consciousness may pass on to rebirth in the imperturbable. This, bhikkhus, is declared to be the second way directed to the imperturbable. Again, bhikkhus, a noble disciple considers thus: sensual pleasures here and now, and sensual pleasures in lives to come. Sensual perceptions here and now, and sensual perceptions in lives to come. Material forms here and now, and material forms in lives to come. Perceptions of forms here and now, and perceptions of forms in lives to come. Both alike are impermanent. What is impermanent is not worth delighting in. not worth welcoming, not worth holding on to. When he practices in this way and frequently abides thus, his mind acquires confidence in this base. Once there is full confidence, he either attains to the imperturbable now, or else he resolves upon it with wisdom. On the dissolution of the body after death, it is possible that the evolving consciousness may pass on to rebirth in the imperturbable. This, bhikkhus, is declared to be the third way directed to the imperturbable. Again, bhikkhus, a noble disciple considers thus: sensual pleasures here and now, and sensual pleasures in lives to come. Sensual perceptions here and now, and sensual perceptions in lives to come. Material forms here and now, and material forms in lives to come. Perceptions of forms here and now, and perceptions of forms in lives to come. And perceptions of the imperturbable, all are perceptions. Where these perceptions cease without remainder, that is the peaceful, that is the sublime, namely the base of nothingness. When he practices in this way and frequently abides thus, his mind acquires confidence in this base. Once there is full confidence, he either attains to the base of nothingness now, or else resolves upon it with wisdom. On the dissolution of the body after death, it is possible that the evolving consciousness may pass on to rebirth in the base of nothingness. This, bhikkhus, is declared to be the first way directed to the base of nothingness. Again, bhikkhus, a noble disciple gone to the forest or to the root of a tree or to an empty hut considers thus: this is void of a self, or of what belongs to a self. When he practices in this way and frequently abides thus, his mind acquires confidence in this base. Once there is full confidence, he either attains to the base of nothingness now, or else he resolves upon it with wisdom. On the dissolution of the body after death, it is possible that the evolving consciousness may pass on to rebirth in the base of nothingness. This, bhikkhus, is declared to be the second way directed to the base of nothingness. Again, bhikkhus, a noble disciple considers thus: I am not anything belonging to anyone anywhere, nor is there anything belonging to me in anyone anywhere. When he practices in this way and frequently abides thus, his mind acquires confidence in this base. Once there is full confidence, he either attains to the base of nothingness now, or else he resolves upon it with wisdom. On the dissolution of the body after death, it is possible that the evolving consciousness may pass on to rebirth in the base of nothingness. This, bhikkhus, is declared to be the third way directed to the base of nothingness. Again, bhikkhus, a noble disciple considers thus: sensual pleasures here and now, and sensual pleasures in lives to come. Sensual perceptions here and now, and sensual perceptions in lives to come. Material forms here and now, and material forms in lives to come. Perceptions of forms here and now, and perceptions of forms in lives to come. Perceptions of the imperturbable, and perceptions of the base of nothingness. All are perceptions. Where these perceptions cease without remainder, that is the peaceful, that is the sublime, namely the base of neither perception nor non-perception. When he practices in this way and frequently abides thus, his mind acquires confidence in this base. Once there is full confidence, he either attains to the base of neither perception nor non-perception now, or else he resolves upon it with wisdom. On the dissolution of the body after death, it is possible that the evolving consciousness may pass on to rebirth in the base of neither perception nor non-perception. This, bhikkhus, is declared to be the way directed to the base of neither perception nor non-perception. When this was said, the Venerable Ananda said to the Blessed One, "Venerable Sir, here a bhikkhu is practicing thus. It might not be, and it might not be mine. It will not be, and it will not be mine. What exists, what has come to be, that I am abandoning." Thus he obtains equanimity. Venerable Sir, does such a bhikkhu attain nibbana? One bhikkhu here, Ananda, might obtain nibbana. Another bhikkhu here might not obtain nibbana. What is the cause and reason, Venerable Sir, why one bhikkhu here might attain nibbana, while another bhikkhu here might not attain nibbana? Here, Ananda, a bhikkhu is practicing thus. It might not be, and it will not be mine. It might not be, and it might not be mine. It will not be, and it will not be mine. What exists, what has come to be, that I am abandoning. Thus he obtains equanimity. He delights in that equanimity, welcomes it, and remains holding on to it. As he does so, his consciousness becomes dependent on it and clings to it. A bhikkhu with clinging, Ananda, does not attain nibbana. But, Venerable Sir, when that bhikkhu clings, what does he cling to? To the base of neither perception nor non-perception, Ananda. When that bhikkhu clings, Venerable Sir, it seems he clings to the best object of clinging. When that bhikkhu clings, Ananda, he clings to the best object of clinging. For this is the best object of clinging, namely the base of neither perception nor non-perception. Here, Ananda, a bhikkhu is practicing thus. It might not be, and it might not be mine. It will not be, and it will not be mine. What exists, what has come to be, that I am abandoning. Thus he obtains equanimity. He does not delight in that equanimity, welcome it, or remain holding on to it. Since he does not do so, his consciousness does not become dependent on it and does not cling to it. A bhikkhu without clinging, Ananda, attains nibbana. It is wonderful, Venerable Sir, it is marvelous. The Blessed One indeed has explained to us the crossing of the flood in dependence upon one support or another. But, Venerable Sir, what is noble liberation? Here, Ananda, a noble disciple, considers thus: sensual pleasures here and now, and sensual pleasures in lives to come. Sensual perceptions here and now, and sensual perceptions in lives to come. Material forms here and now, and material forms in lives to come. Perceptions of forms here and now, and perceptions of forms in lives to come. Perceptions of the imperturbable, perceptions of the base of nothingness, and perceptions of the base of neither perception nor non-perception. This is identity as far as identity extends. This is the deathless, namely the liberation of the mind through not clinging. Thus, Ananda, I have taught the way directed to the imperturbable. I have taught the way directed to the base of nothingness. I have taught the way directed to the base of neither perception nor non-perception. I have taught the crossing of the flood in dependence upon one support or another, I have taught noble liberation. What should be done for his disciples out of compassion by a teacher who seeks their welfare and has compassion for them, that I have done for you, Ananda. There are these roots of trees, these empty huts. Meditate, Ananda. Do not delay, or else you will regret it later. This is our instruction to you. This is what the Blessed One said. The Venerable Ananda was satisfied and delighted in the Blessed One's words. So the Buddha explains ways of attending the mind towards various jhanas. He talks about 3 ways, first and foremost, to the way to the imperturbable, as it's translated. And this is in relation to the 4th jhana, in which one develops deep equanimity, and there is a deep state of mind in which there is neither pain nor pleasure or any attending to any form of thought, to any form of sensual pleasures or any form of sensual perceptions. One's mind is deeply rooted in the 4th jhana, in that level of equanimity. In the second manner or way towards the imperturbable, as it's translated, is in relation to understanding infinite space. And then the third way is infinite consciousness. In the infinite space aspect, the Buddha is referring towards expanding one's awareness beyond the body and expanding it with the Brahma Vihara of compassion, as it's understood through the twin practice. And then one understands through infinite space that space is infinite. In other words, mind has expanded to the outer limits of space to the point that it reaches the limits of conscious perception or sense perceptions. And in this process, one will start to see the infinite consciousnesses arise and pass away through various or through one or more of the sense doors. If one is inclined towards the visual forms or the sense of the eyes, one will see perhaps a ring of light in one's limits or periphery of one's inner vision in meditation. Or one might see flickers of light going on and off, and each flicker on and off is an arising and passing away. Likewise, with relation to the ears, one might hear auditory consciousnesses arise and pass away in the way of flickers or certain sounds coming in and out, turning on and off. And then in the way of the nose consciousness, one might start to experience various fragrances. Likewise for the tongue, in experiencing certain sensations there. Likewise for the skin, where one might start to experience certain jolts of electricity or any other form of tangibles upon the skin that turn on and off. And each turning on and off of any of these five physical senses is an arising and passing away of consciousness. So in the case of the mind, one might start to see that the mind is sinking deeper and is not attending to any of the background thoughts in the way of becoming distracted, and then starts to see that the wisps of thoughts have become even lighter, and that they become frames of thoughts that come in and out of the periphery of the mind. And so this is the mind objects that arise and pass away without attending to them and not being distracted by them. And they are the arising and passing away of the mind consciousness. Then what happens is one understands that this is not me, this is not mine, because there's no controller in any of this arising and passing away, and understands that there is impermanence to these arising and passing away of consciousnesses that occur in every second. And then the mind further dives deeper into what is known as the base of nothingness, with the perception that there is nothingness. But there is still that perception of nothingness. There is still that sense of awareness of this nothingness. So by having this awareness, there is a sense that there is a being experiencing this nothingness. If one lets go even of this perception of nothingness, goes beyond that, and in some sense of the word ignores the perceptions that might arise, including that of the perception of nothingness. And the way to do that is to understand that even this perception of nothingness is dependent on various factors, causes, and conditions. Let's go of that, and the mind further sinks deeper into a state of clarity, a clear, tranquil, bright mind. And having then surpassed that base of nothingness, one starts to see even subtler formations in the depths of one's mind, and starts to see various forms of perceptions from those formations. And so in that there is that lucidity of being aware, but at the same time, there is no thing or no perception that is fully being formed in the way of being fully conscious of it and grasping onto it. As soon as it arises in the vision, so to speak, of this tranquil mind, it is let go of through the automatic 6R process. And so bit by bit, gradually, the mind starts to silence even further into tranquil mind, not paying attention to any perceptions, not paying attention to any formations that are arising. And one reaches that still point of that signless concentration, that signless collectedness, that signless samadhi, where once having experienced that all formations are not worth holding on to, one lets go of it. But there is still this idea, this concept, this consciousness of that form of samadhi or collectedness, that form of awareness. And so when one sees through this as well, one lets go of even the formations that have fabricated that state of perception and consciousness. And when one lets go, one's mind switches off into cessation of perception and feeling. And then upon emergence from that cessation of perception and feeling, one experiences the links of dependent origination and nibbana through not involving any personal sense of self as the links arise. And through that experience, destroys one or a set of different fetters depending on where one's mind is, having attained nibbana, and how one grasps or not grasps after the relief that is experienced, after the contact that arises from the nibbana element. And so that then determines the mind's state thereafter. And of course, one then understands through one's own experiences where the mind is in reference to the levels of awakening. But the ultimate is non-identification with any of these states, even post-nibbana. By doing so, one breaks all fetters, breaks all taints, or destroys all taints, defilements, or projections, and then attains the ultimate, arahatship. Now, the Buddha talks about the evolving consciousness and how if a mind remains rooted in any of these states with identifying with them and attaching a personalized sense of self, having achieved these states, if one has not gone further, there is the chance, there is the possibility of having developed these states to such a level that the formations have been reconditioned from these states, from contact with these states, that upon dissolution of the body, when death approaches, these formations in the mind will start to appear. At that point in time, on the medical level, on the biological level, it would seem that the body is completely dead. There is no more of a heartbeat, and the brain, as it is scanned, may no longer have any indication that it is functioning. But within the depths of the mind, there is still activity that is arising in which the formations that are strongly rooted through having been well developed in one's life. For example, if one has developed and not gone further than the realm of neither perception nor non-perception, and developed the formations from that meditation practice, it may very well be that those formations will then arise and create and activate a consciousness, and through grasping and to taking it personal, that being or that mind will then grasp onto those formations with intention. That consciousness will then carry forth those formations rooted in that intention and then establish itself into another mentality. And through that establishment of that mentality, the formations related to neither perception nor non-perception are then further experienced in that realm of neither perception nor non-perception, where the mentality continues to experience it for so many countless years and countless eons, that eventually the formations wear out, or the formations having been fully experienced, the mindfulness or the attention to that realm of neither perception nor non-perception starts to erode. And then a being, upon dissolving from that realm, will then reappear through the process of rebirth, which means now that the formations of that neither perception or non-perception have been eroded, have been experienced, other formations start to arise that were in relation to the experiences of one's life, whether it was in the human realm, in the Deva realm, in the animal realm, in the hell realms, depending upon which formations are strongest at the point of dissolution. They will then activate a certain consciousness, which will then take root through, again, intention, by grasping onto those formations through either craving, having taken it personal, or not wanting that. And then those formations will then be established through that consciousness that establishes itself into a new mentality materiality. Let us take the example of a human birth, in which that consciousness now establishes itself at the point of conception into the new mentality materiality that has just been conceived. Upon establishing itself and experiencing that establishment, that consciousness dissipates, but those formations that are rooted will now start to activate another layer of consciousness, or another consciousness altogether, rather, which then is dissipating and appearing, and dissipating and appearing based on the experiences of the being that is being developed in that womb. And so the formations that take root through the experiences of that fetus as it develops starts to become established and activated through more arising and passing away of consciousnesses. And then finally, at the point of birth, the development of that being and the physical birth, the consciousness arises and passes away yet again, over and over and over. And then upon growth and maturation, depending upon the experiences of that new being, new formations will take root, and old formations may be reconditioned, or other formations from previous lives will start to be activated. Then, therefore, having caused the arising and passing away of other consciousnesses through which those experiences of those formations are then understood in that body, in that being. And this all arises through the mechanics of karma. This is why holding on to neither perception nor non-perception, or even the signless samadhi, is not the ultimate. Because it is dependent upon various causes and conditions, it is still rooted in formations, in taking those states personal. In such a being, it will continue to take rebirth through various evolving consciousnesses upon dissolution of the mentality in the higher realms, of the jhana realms and the arupa jhana realms, or the mentality materiality of the deva realms and lower beyond to the hell realms, and in between that the animal and human realms. So the realm of neither perception or non-perception cannot be considered to be the ultimate, because there is still a layer or level of clinging that is associated with the formations that arise from that state through the perception of that state, through taking that state to be personal, in which one experiences a sense of self-experiencing it, meaning in which one says or has the understanding that I am experiencing this right now. By attaching that sense of self and clinging onto it with that, there is no further development. But if one continues to consistently let go, one will have the experience of nibbana. And then at the very end of the person's life, in that lifetime, depending upon their level of awakening, certain formations have been utterly, completely destroyed that may cause rebirth in the lower realms, lower than the human realms. For example, when one has stream entry, one has closed off entrance into the lower realms, lower than the human state, because one has destroyed the fetters and the formations rooted in those fetters, or the fetters rooted in those formations, which is to say that no longer has any doubt about the practice, no longer considers any other practices to be the way to Nibbana, and no longer has a notion that there is some form of a soul or permanent self. And therefore, one has eradicated these layers of wrong views. Because of the destruction of these wrong views, there is no way for that being to take birth again in the lower realms, lower than the human realm. Likewise, you can extrapolate that for the Sakadagami, who has weakened the fetters of sensual craving and ill will. And then, of course, the Anagami, who has completely eradicated the first 5 fetters, takes one more rebirth in the pure abodes and then attains final Nibbana there. And then finally, the Arahant, who upon the Parinibbana does not attach any sense of self to anything, because all throughout that existence, so to speak, after attaining Arahatship, there is no more holding on to things, no more holding on to any of the links of dependent origination, understanding with wisdom and the realized complete right view of the Four Noble Truths, that all things that arise are temporary, are impermanent, therefore are not worth holding on to, and therefore not considered to be self. So with that understanding, when there are formations that arise at the point of dissolution of the body, when they do arise, there is no grasping onto them. And because there's no grasping onto them, with the correct understanding of the right view, of the effective vision, of the perfected right view, there is no new consciousness that is developed and activated through taking the formations that arise as personal, or craving for them, or attaching a sense of self to them, or not wanting them. And that is why upon dissolution, the final consciousness that had arisen extinguishes with that parinibbana, and with the extinguishment of the final 5 aggregates for that being prior to parinibbana. And therefore there is no more rebirth, both in the micro level sense, because there is no rebirth at the level of the links of dependent origination on the micro level, where nothing is being taken personal, therefore craving cannot arise, and therefore clinging cannot arise, and therefore being cannot arise, and therefore birth cannot arise, and therefore there is no rebirth into a new level of suffering. And then on the macro level, where the consciousness does not take root through any personalized intention by taking anything that arises in the way of formations as personal, and therefore there is no new consciousness activated, and therefore there is no more rebirth on that level as well for the Arahat. So what's important to understand now in the context of meditation is that when one attains these higher states of meditation, including cessation of perception and feeling, one is not to grasp onto them with a sense of I, with a sense of being, with a sense of delight that is rooted in a personalized self, because that then creates craving. That then conditions craving and continues the links of dependent origination thereafter. That's why when upon cessation of perception and feeling, the emergence of that, one experiences the links, one continues to be uninvolved, does not take even that relief to be there that is personal or affecting a sense of self, letting go completely, and then attains arahatship. So going back to the meditation, it's all about continually letting go the idea that there is these states that are being attained by a sense of self, that are being clung to through that sense of self. When you start the detachment of that through the 6R process of letting go even the subtlest formations that might start to create desire or create delight or create the attachment of the idea and the conceit that I am the one who has attained neither perception nor non-perception, or I am experiencing neither perception or non-perception. Let's go of that idea and concept, then one gets closer and closer to Nibbana. All that's left to be done at that point is to continually let go of every notion, idea, and concept and expectation, even the expectation of Nibbana, which can create a concept of Nibbana. Letting go of all of this is the way to Nibbana.
In terms of a being who is about to die and is about to experience, the extinguishments of, the heat and vitality in the body, is it then best to, if one has practiced during the lifetime, to be in jhanas, or really to let go deformations as much as possible, if possible, obviously because of the bodily conditions at that point in time?
Yes. If one is already in the practice, for one, it would be advisable for that being to continue to practice at the highest level that they've attained at. So if somebody has attained, for example, the level of nothingness, to allow mind to incline towards that nothingness. Once one has established that consciousness in nothingness, the work there is to continually to let go from there on. So it is possible that before dissolution, that one may still attain Nibbana. So it's a matter of continually practicing to continually develop and strengthen those formations, and then ultimately let go of any attachments to those formations. So the more one develops their jhana practice, the more one is inclined towards one of the realms associated with the rupa or arupa jhanas. But in the end, it's still important to try to let go of them.
And a follow-up question. So in terms of a being where vitality and heat has been dissipated, and like you're describing, the heart has stopped beating, there's no activity measured in the brain, there's still things happening in the deeper mind, and there's still formations. Is this also the reason why it may be advisable to leave a body for 1 or 2 days without touching or moving it to allow the body to be in peace? Or not?
Well, at that level of mind, there is no connection to the body anymore. Okay. It's like when you are in a higher state of jhana, or even more importantly, and probably more contextually relevant in this case, is cessation of perception and feeling. In cessation of perception and feeling, if one touches the body, there is no feeling arising from it, because the mind has completely disconnected, so to speak, from that body. So whatever one does to that body, the formations, one must understand, are not purely physical in the form of materiality. The formations are rooted in the mentality first and foremost. Even if it is physical formations that are attributed to the breathing and so on, they first and foremost start on the mental level. So there is a subtle level beyond the material form where this activity is happening. So some traditions talk about, for example, leaving a body for 1 or 2 days or even longer, but it's not connected to anything to do with the formations in and of themselves, because that process will still occur where the mind, beyond the level of the brain, will continue to either attach or detach itself from the formations, and then therefore determine whether that a new consciousness arises, and then immediately spontaneously takes rebirth through conception into a new mentality or a new mentality materiality, depending upon what formations that consciousness has clung to with the intention.
And you mentioned that if one has attained cessation of perception, feeling, and consciousness, and one emerges from that state and one is seeing the links of dependent origination and touches the Nibbana element, then straight afterwards there's this feeling of relief. And so I understand, so this feeling of relief is actually a form of craving where the being is attaching the sense of relief to the sense of self.
Yes.
So, and then if you move to the higher attainments, anagami and especially arahatship, then there's no identification with any of that. The experiences that people tell about the first level of attainment, the Suttavada level, is like what the Buddha is describing, this ocean of suffering. So, but where does it originate from? Is it originating from having experienced Nibbana? Is it originated from the fact that you have let go of the 3 lower fetters and now basically the search, if you will, has ended because I know the path, there's no doubt anymore, and doubt can generate a lot of suffering in one's mind? Is that what's happening?
It is due to the destruction of the 3 fetters, yes, because that ocean of suffering that one has basically lifted off of, so to speak, is the ocean of suffering that could have been experienced had the 3 fetters still been there, which is that there is the potentials for that being to then take rebirth in lower realms. So that ocean of suffering that has been removed is because of the destruction of the first 3 fetters upon having experienced the links of dependent origination in the way that one experiences it, and then enters the stream and understands that this is the path that leads to my welfare and that leads to ultimate liberation. So the relief that one experiences is, of course, the happiness and bliss that arises from having made contact with Nibbana at the level of contact. But then there is still, as you just mentioned, and as was previously discussed, the attachment to that relief, which then denotes that there's still some more work to be done. But that doesn't mean that there is no cause for celebration, because with the destruction of the first 3 fetters, it's a very big step into, entering the path. And now one is assured full awakening at some point or another, whether in the same lifetime or another lifetime.
And then a last question on my side, like potentially a little bit of a mundane question, which is that if one starts on the path and one is seeing the Buddha's teaching and conceptually starts to understand dependent origination and the states of higher mind, there is the intention and there is the craving, if you will, in terms to start on a path, to go for a meditation retreat, to attain Nibbana, to do all these great things. And then when one is moving out on the path, basically, almost and letting that go in a state of neither perception nor non-perception, to let go of even that intention. Is that typically, let's call it the lifetime of a meditator works?
Yeah, in that process, it's you would not say it would be craving, because although it is a reaction or a response to a feeling which is then directing that being towards wanting to better themselves or wanting to enter the path and so on, it is also considered to be what is known in Pali as chanda, which is a pure desire or a positive, wholesome desire, or as I kind of translate it as a cultivated intention, which means it's an intention that has been cultivated having first understood through analysis and seeing for oneself that yes, there's potential here for me to attain Nibbana, and there's potential here for me to attain happiness. And so rooted in that sort of a wholesome desire, one then goes on towards the path and then develops meditation practice and so on. So the interesting thing here to note is that in the case of one who has not entered the path, all the way up to one who has attained the level of anagami, the links of dependent origination run through to suffering, because even at the level of an anagami, there is still the conceit which takes something as personal, although there is no sensual craving or ill will. So at the level of feeling, there's still a personalizing of that feeling, which then clings to a sense of an idea of I, me, or mine. And so there is some subtle level of suffering, but that suffering is very subtle compared to the suffering of, let's say, one never having entered the path, one who is a stream enterer, or one who is a sakadagami. But the thing to point out here is, it would seem, quite correctly so, that suffering is the beginning, meaning that once one sees that I'm suffering here and I want a way out, the wanting a way out, having understood and analyzed that nothing so far seems to be helping me out of the suffering, is through which that cultivated intention is then developed. And then from there is what is known as the transcendent dependent origination, in which one then first looks and investigates, has faith and conviction, and then leads on into joy and bliss through the jhanas and equanimity and so on and so forth, and tranquility, and in development of all the path factors, and ultimately that leads to Nibbana. So, it's important to see that even though one is in suffering, it's important to see whether they want to continue to be in suffering or if they want a way out. So the beginning point is always seeing that so far what I'm doing is not working. So I need some kind of way out, and I'm going to take a look at this, investigate for myself, and if it works for me, I will further develop it.
No more questions. Shall we share merit?
Yes, let's do that.
May suffering ones be suffering free, and the fear-struck fearless be. May the grieving shed all grief, and may all beings find relief. May all beings share this merit that we have thus acquired for the acquisitions of all kinds of happiness. May being inhabiting space and earth, Devas and Nagas of mighty power, share this merit of ours. May they long protect the Buddha's dispensation. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.